Welcome to the Building Blocks podcast, where we discuss the career paths of leaders in the energy, utility, and construction fields to better understand the habits, routines, and mindset that has built these successful men and women. I'm your host, Brad Coleman. It took me 20 years to understand my strengths. My goal is to identify the common traits of leaders in our industry to provide you with the tools you need to be successful in a fraction of that time. Thank you for listening. For more information on these guests and others, please come find me on LinkedIn. I want to chronicle what made Jesse the Jesse that we see today.
Okay.
That's the goal. Because instead of seeing the polished, great on video and all of this, I always felt vulnerable about the fact that I'm a fake because I'm trying to put this image out there, but I've had so many screw ups and wrong decisions in my career and the twists and the turns. I was like, I don't want kids that are following me that I know that are just starting a career thinking that I got to where I am by being perfect and just making all the right decisions, because it's the opposite. I've learned more from the mistakes than I have the successes.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And that's the thing. I love that because you're going to help a bunch of people get off center by just knowing, like, oh, screwing up is part of the path.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. The part that I have to figure out is the advice was given to me, and they said, it was Jonathan. I've learned so much from Jonathan. He's putting out videos for contractors and stuff about how to do social media. Yep. He's just talking to me as far as I'm concerned. I mean, really, how to create content, how to do it, just start rolling video and having a conversation, and you'd be surprised how many clips come out of it.
Yes.
Right? Because that's what he said, just start it once a week, flip on the camera and start interviewing your CEO. Just talking, and it gets them more relatable within the organization. It puts their face on social media. And so, I'm taking that playbook.
Yeah,
and
man.
The one thing that he said, if you're going to position yourself as the expert, you're bringing the experts onto your podcast to interview them, and they're going to give you a lot of gold nuggets. But that's not doing anything for your image when you're trying to position yourself as the expert. And so that's the part that I have to figure out how to meld these two worlds.
Yeah, a couple things. Every now and then I'll say something smart when I'm interviewing somebody. That makes a real nice short clip. Like just that part.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. Those are going to LinkedIn. The other ones are going to TikTok. I try to share as much as I can everywhere. But what I'm starting to practice is doing a solo cast. And I've got a list of ideas that I'm going to talk through. And really for me, it's just me talking to the camera about an idea that I don't fully have my hands wrapped around.
Ooh, like it.
Right. And just kind of working through that. Now, will that make me look like an authority or more like a dummy? I don't know. But that's my plan going forward.
You're brainstorming in real time.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's this thing that I see, I feel some kind of way about it. I also know, when I journal those types of ideas, I get more clarity about it. So I'm like, okay, same thing except on video. So anyways, that's the plan. We'll see how it goes.
Here's an idea that I'm kicking around. One thing Jonathan said was, he said, hosting podcasts is big right now. If I could find a podcast, I don't want to partner with the wrong person, but it'd have to be a good fit. It would take the pressure off me it decreases the pressure by half. It decreases the pressure of getting episodes out by half. But think about if I find somebody, because I say utility and construction is my target, young professionals in utility and construction. I'm in utilities. I'm more closely aligned with what Renee does, working for Saws, than I am anything that you do in your world. He and I can talk utilities because gas is more closely aligned with water and how water flows. I'm in water, sewer, electric, gas, and fiber. That's the world that I live in. And that's what I understand more than your side of construction, for context. If I could find a construction person that's at the same level of trying to grow their brand, that I could I could do this, then it becomes natural because I don't know that side of the world. All I have to do, we pick a topic, we come on, I ask them the questions from a construction perspective, they in turn ask me from a utility perspective and it becomes banter. It's the same thing you're talking about, working ideas out in real time. You're just not having to do it while looking into this camera. You
Right.
actually have a
It's a
physical person to
conversation.
have to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's my idea. I'm just not, but I'm not gonna just partner necessarily with anyone. And maybe it becomes more of a, instead of an interview Josh, interview Lance, interview Jesse, maybe it becomes, there's a topic. I'm gonna invite Jesse on to talk about this specific problem within the construction industry, and then we're gonna discuss the banter between this is what utilities is and this is what construction is. Maybe it's not one. I was actually texting Renee back and forth about this one day, that maybe it's not one co-host. Maybe it's each episode is a topic with a different co-host, and you can even go see what I'm saying. And so you could even say, hey Jesse, I want to have you on a podcast, let's do one specific topic. What is a problem in the construction, give me 3 problems in the construction industry that you want to banter a little bit. Maybe I can pick one that we're also facing in utilities, and then we can talk about the different perspectives of it.
Oh yeah. As you're talking about that, I remember back in my plumbing days, constant was the thing that happened all the damn time. I got my plumbing, my sanitary feed out of the building 5 foot, which was my contract, before the dang utility contractor got there. They just acted like, oh, well, we roughed it in and made no effort to make the connection or have a conversation about the connection. So many times that's happened. One time, it was a big, fancy theater, movie theater here, where ridiculous. The sanitary was never connected to the utility feed, like the feed from the exterior. You know when they found out? Grand opening.
Oh, oh no.
Oh man, like what are we doing? Anyhow, so yeah, I might have some trauma flashbacks, but I feel you. I think there's a lot.
Shoot. Okay. Let's make it like a little official start. I don't really have an official intro, but I figure I might have to do all that in post production or something. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet. But let me start. This is Brad. Welcome to the Building Blocks podcast, where we talk to utilities and construction professionals about the successes and failures that they've had in hopes of dissecting and learning the lessons that they've learned, so that maybe we don't always have to make the same mistakes, or at least can learn from their mistakes. Today, we're talking to Jesse Hernandez, who has a vast, extensive background in construction, the construction trades. Now he's working more on the lean side of things and construction management. Jesse, introduce yourself if you would. Just tell us, just for backstory, kind of an origin story of filling in some details of what got Jesse to the point that he is today.
Oh man, Brad, thank you for having me. I feel like super honored being early on this podcast and on your journey with this thing. So I started my career back in the 1900s. 1995, graduated high school, got a summer job, went to and I was supposed to just save up some cash. And I walked the job through. It was like my first commercial project. It was a renovation of Memorial High School here in San Antonio. And I was like, cool, this is amazing. Where's this been all my life? So I decided, okay, this is what I'm gonna do because of the physicality of the work, competitive environment, the challenge, like just the sensory input on the job site was so high that it was a calming effect on me. And I didn't have to worry about people getting after me for not sitting still and not raising my hand and improper punctuation and all that other garbage. So it was like, it was the best place for me. Anyhow, I knew that I didn't want to be working as hard as my dad did. My dad retired maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but he's a plumber also. And he's a hard working animal, like just hard working. So, anyways, I went first year, I think within the first 90 days, I ended up pairing up with a woman who said, hey, dude, you got some snap, can do more with yourself, but you got to find an apprenticeship program. I said, oh, okay, I don't want to be here for 30 years. So I found the apprenticeship program, did 4 years of that, ended up getting into the foreman role, superintendent role, got into like manpower or labor, together some recruiting, bring kids, high school students into the workforce. Uh, and then I went to the dark side. I went to work for a general contractor. So in that time when I was with the trades, I got introduced to lean construction, and as a foreman, it made my life and I ended up becoming the in-house. I was working for TD Industries, amazing contractor. I became the lean champion. They invested a lot in training and helping me learn more in terms of leadership and the last planet. That put me in front of other people, which led to the job with the general contractor. Worked there for 3.5 years. My title was regional lean manager. I flew around the central United States helping people deploy change out on the job side, in business units, in the different departments. From there, I went to work for a national brand. Kind of, they were the owner, developer, operator business model, if you will. I got to serve there as the director of environmental health and safety. Now I run my own business. About 2 years now. In April, it'll be 2 years. And the one thing that hit me between the eyes that helped me say, okay, I think I can help a lot of people was in all those jobs that I had, I got exposed to hundreds of leaders and leadership styles and methodology to communicate and grow and execute. And there's a small handful of leaders that stood out. The one thing they had in common was a people centered focus. So the leaders with the people centered focus, one interesting thing was like they weren't jerks. They had high expectations and they had phenomenal outcomes on their projects. When I say phenomenal, I don't mean like they finished on time and on budget. I mean phenomenal. They made a hell of a lot of money. They had continued work with the clientele. The people around them grew, and they weren't like patting everybody on the behind. Like, they had firm expectations. They set challenges. They provided the resources for people to meet those challenges, and they were also learning and growing themselves. And I said, it doesn't seem to matter what their education was, whether they were managing $1 billion program or a $280,000 renovation. It really came down to the way they operated. And I was fortunate in that having learned to speak the multiple language, right? Language of the office dwellers and the language of the folks that install the damn work and everybody in between. And so because I could do that, found myself kind of doing a different kind of thing. Maybe the best way I can describe it is being a trusted advisor, a trusted resource to leaders. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. Like, how do I do that more? Not necessarily do that, but how do I help other people do that?
Who are you consulting with now? Like what level of the organization? Individual organization, where in the organization are you consulting generally?
Yeah, yeah. Here's the interesting thing. I have one group that I'm working with, and we're working with VPs, directors, project executives, general superintendents. Like that's the core group that I'm playing with because that was the direction we decided. Let's start here with the influence, the folks with the most influence and the most responsibility, and then we'll cascade down to the field. There's in other situations, it's a one-on-one coaching situation with folks that are emerging leaders. So the gambit kind of wide.
Okay.
Most of my work is with general contractors,
Okay.
but I'm targeting. I really want to spend more time with the subcontractors, and I just need to figure out how to make that happen.
Do you just have more inroads with the contractors right now than necessarily their subs, or what?
That's a really great question. I think I just got lucky, right? Like when I started my business, this was my plan. I had 18 months worth of cash in the bank, which gave me 18 months to figure out how to start a business. That was my plan. Fortunately, I've got a lot of amazing people in my network that have connected me with folks that were looking for resources, the type of services that I can provide, right? Which ended up being general contractors. I think, and I don't know, I can't prove this, but I think part of the problem is a lot of subcontractors, they don't put a lot of money into professional development for their field leaders.
Okay.
So that's one truth, the one observation I have. The other observation I have, and you know this life, right? They got so much stuff going on all the time. A project manager for a general contract typically have one project. They might have two, maybe three, depending on the volume of their business. Trade project managers and superintendents have 5 or 6 projects. And so the sky's falling down on all of them. And the time it takes to invest in personal or professional development is a heavy lift for them. And so I think the combination of those 2 things, plus historically consulting target trade contractors, because who writes the biggest check? The general contractor. That's just Jesse logic. I don't know how true it is, but those are my
What's the difference in strategic approach of what the GC companies need to hear from you as opposed to how your message would be catered differently to the trades?
Oh, I love that question. I wouldn't say there's a difference in terms of the strategy and approach. The difference is the approach is to the work that they do. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the last planner system, but I did this and I see a lot of people do this. They love the last planner system. They think it's amazing. And they think it solves every problem.
What is it called?
So last planner system.
Last planner system. I am not familiar with that.
Oh yeah. If you've seen sticky notes on the wall.
Is it a lean strategy? Is that what it is?
Yes, yes. So it's a tool. The last planner system is a tool within the lean umbrella. And so there are other tools in the lean omniverse that are specific or better suited to address the problems and the type of work different layers of the organization deal with. One of those is the A3 thinking, which is what I use when I'm serving like general contractors, and not just general contractors, it's more around, we'll say project executive, senior project manager, senior superintendent, and up. That's the framework that I'm going to think through with their brains on. Because most of the problems they deal with are interdepartmental, right? There's some complexity within it, like a different type of complexity. And more importantly, they typically have been solving the same problems for decades, which means they haven't solved the problem. And so the way I approach it is to help them understand the problem from multiple perspectives, meaning all the people that are involved with it. And there's some methodology, there's a bunch of staff, with a heavy focus on socializing the problem solving effort. Generally, that's how I approach that level of the organization. So whether they're a trader or they're a general contractor, that's what we're going to do. Now, when I get to the field, there's the difference, right? When I'm talking about the making the work better for the men and women who do the work, it's the same framework of the A3 thinking, except that it's focused on we'll say, like a sniper scope focus on a specific element of work, how to study that work, break it down, identify things that are hard and make them better, and produce or generate measurable impact. That system, which is virtual SQI, is my favorite. It's easier to do and show the labor hour gains or safety gains or quality gains because we can do it in a matter of days. The other one is harder to quantify that because it could also be done in a matter of days. But imagine a director of pre-construction not doing anything else for 6 days. Their work just piles up, right? So really, it's how do we balance that out so that we can produce the results and produce the learning. That's where some of the flexibility has to happen.
So you said in the field with the subs, you take more of a sniper type approach to identifying and studying one particular problem and studying how to make that work. And then for the goal of producing a measurable impact. Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is, if anything, you're bringing to the surface problem solving skills and then giving them the tools to, first off, you're teaching them how to think through the problem and then providing the tools for how to organize and plan it. Is that?
You got it. Yeah, you nailed it. So on both sides, it's the same thing. And so I'm going to make this point again because I want people to kind of get pissed off at me. There's so many people in the construction business. We all pat ourselves on the back for how freaking great problem solvers we are. And we go and solve the same problem in 3 months, in 6 months, next project, next team, next job. Did you solve the problem? No. If it keeps coming up, you haven't solved the problem.
Right.
You're firefighting. And I think the conditions in construction reinforce that, right? Because we have schedule pressures, we've got budget pressures, we got a million things pulling at us. So all we can do is stop the bleeding, but we don't know that we haven't solved the problem
Right.
because we like to call ourselves problem solvers. And so, yes, what I'm delivering to the office field is a structured, fact-based, assumption-free approach to problem solving.
Right. So when we're stopping the bleeding, we joke about it's a band-aid approach. You're using
Yep.
that same
Yep.
analogy as a literal band-aid
Yes.
approach, but you're saying we never do any root cause analysis to after figure out where's the bleeding actually coming from. What's the source of the bleeding? But then a minute ago you
You got
said
it.
the problem with subs and suspected that the reason that it would be difficult for them to take this on is because they're always putting out fires every single day. They don't have the time to elevate themselves beyond the problem. If you can't do strategic planning for the next thing or doing root cause analysis when you're constantly putting out fires every day. So how do we address that sort of an issue? I mean, it's kind of a paradox, right?
No, it's not. Like, so one thing I know for sure as a subcontractor, I mean, I spent over 20 years on that side of the business. And if we think about causal factors, a lot of the problem, the fires that I was putting out were not my fires. They were some damn superintendent or some damn project manager's fire wish that they wanted right now, this second. There's some unreasonable expectations from a client. So what's the causal factor to that? Is it possible that business development was pursuing a revenue target with the client that did not align with our core values and would cause us to work against ourselves rather than having the discipline to pick clients that we are best equipped to serve and clients that reinforce or that we can align with in terms of values and appreciation for people, right? So we want the big sexy job. We're gonna be able to put our finger on the fence right to the highway. It's gonna be and it's gonna be a damn disaster because the way they treat subs is like they are less than human. So it ain't gonna be a good experience long term. But on the balance sheet or on the backlog, it looks really good because we got this big sexy project.
I never thought about the total integration going back all the way to the source of the deals that we're evaluating from that perspective. It makes sense. I mean, we say that from a strategic standpoint, but then you're like, do we have the competencies and the resources that are actually in alignment to pull off the vision of what we vision the projects that we're signing?
Yeah, and so that's the whole thing, right? Is when we get into this type of problem solving, we start understanding that, oh, where the problem presents itself, like the pain, the break in the system, what we typically do, that's where we put the band-aid. We blame the people that were closest to the failure. It's them, they need more training, they're underskilled, whatever. Band-Aid, and then it repeat because we've never done put in and when I say we, I'm taking trade like everybody in construction. We don't go and understand all the contributing factors to the situation.
Guilty
What
of
we
that
do is we
mindset.
blame.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that because even when you said that, I thought, yes, 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 we've got to go back to looking at the overall schedule of the project. It is no, 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 no. You're saying the problem's here. Brad just went here. Jesse's saying we go here. It starts
Yeah.
way before that.
Yes. And also, like that doesn't mean that it's only a like this business development thing is the only contributor. It's one of them. And so understanding that there's more than one thing and evaluating, okay, if we do something about this, it could cause this. And if we deploy a countermeasure against this other thing, it could change the outcome in this manner. Okay, which one is going to bring us the greatest return? That business development thing, that's a culture awareness discipline thing. That's going to take a long time to experience the outcome. But there may be some communication with my project manager. I'm a plumbing foreman, and my project manager gets an email, freaks out, call and jumps at every whim. Maybe we could also ask Mr. Project Manager, like, hey, bro, can you like field the call and take a little heat? Because if you give me 3 days to get the people and the resources to go do the thing that they asked you for 5 minutes ago, can finish here, which maintains my budget, and I can go kick butt over there, which they don't just want me to show up, they want me to go kick butt.
Yeah.
So instead of just saying, yes, I'll have somebody the other day, can you ask for a week?
You're conditioning the response, good or bad.
100%. And so the key term is response, not reaction.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. No, I was interviewing somebody else that he was a project manager in a former life, and he was saying, for a GC in that same world, and he was saying I had to develop the habit of when my phone rings and I know that it's going to be something that's an emergency, I won't call them back for 20 minutes. It's like, he's like, because I want them to be able to think through it and figure it out. Do they really need to be bringing that to me? That makes sense. Right. Because not only that, but they're more frontline anyway. They have better data to be able to solve the problem. And do they just need somebody to have the confidence in them to say, I trust you to make the right decision?
Yeah.
How much of the little bit of an idea pivot here, but how much of the world of lean, I don't know, it's become more and more adapted, I think, in the industry. But part of me wonders if it's some of the old guard that is more slow to change because it's not the way that we've always done things. I'm quick to defend the younger generation of kids that don't know how to work or lazy or can't make a decision. My contention is always, there was a day whenever you were the greenhorn and you took your hazing and somebody had to show you too. And now you're not adjusting to the mindset that you're now in that senior position, and if they're not trained, it's because you're not stepping up. But at the same time, let's take into account that they've got some really good ideas because their perspective on the world regarding technology especially is the future. So how can we bring them to the table to get this multi-generational input when it's the old guard that sometimes is the one that has difficulty in changing?
Oh man, this is a big one. So first I'll say this. Everybody in that situation, the old guard, the new person, the person that's in the middle, they're all contributing in some way. I contribute 100 to every negative and every positive situation I've ever been a part of. It's not all my fault, but I did contribute, right? So I think if we took that perspective, it would ease the friction because there's a lot of friction. Also, nobody likes to change. You can ask both of my ex-wives and all my ex-girlfriends. I don't like to change, but I'm a lean guy that advocates for change, right? That is part of being human. So if we accept that, we also accept that we contribute to every situation. We don't really have a lot of things to blame anymore because what we're talking about is humans being humans. Now, for the young folks, and I was guilty of this. Number one thing, don't complain about anything you're not willing to take action on. I used to piss because the water in the water cooler, back when we had water coolers on the job, was warm. Then they said, okay, you're in charge of ice. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Like, no, you want to complain, you're in charge. Awesome. So that's an important lesson. The other important thing is my ideas and opinions carry very little weight. Maybe the weight that my ideas and opinions have is relative to my body of work. So if I've done the current method and produced results and have an idea and an opinion of how we should change the current way, it's going to carry more weight. If I showed up and it's day one and I'm saying this is stupid, this is antiquated, we should do it differently, it carries no weight because I have no body of work. And I also, another truth, telling a dummy that they're a dummy and help them, right? So if I'm telling an old dude, like, dude, you're a dummy, why are you still writing that shit out? You get an iPad and take notes and do speech to text. And I lost them when I called them dummy. Now, on the other end, for been at it for a while, there's this weird because I've had it, right? And all of this I'm saying because I've been on all the way through it. I get a little irritated that Renee, my baby brother, 18 years younger than me, that's that guy so easy. And I just want him to feel a little bit of the pain that I felt when I was coming up. Like we have this weird like romantic about back in my day, right, we didn't have vacuum up hammer drills. We didn't have no damn lasers. Like, yeah, you're right. And we do now. And back when your grandparents were out there running around, they didn't have air conditioning. I bet you got air conditioning in your house. When I was a kid, we didn't have flat screen cable. I bet you got one now, right? So I think there's something we need to do in terms of like, yes, they got it a little easier, but that's not their fault. And we have a responsibility to develop it, right? So I went all over the place. What do you think?
Yeah, no. I mean, I think just because of the technological advances that we've seen in the last 30 years, like let's say a
Yep.
professional working career for someone in their 50s, mid 50s to late 60s, or mid 50s to 60 right now, early 60s, we've never seen so much change in such a short period of time. And so when two or
Yes.
three generations back, between generations and the way we worked, there really wasn't that much change. And I hadn't thought about this before. This is kind of real time, honestly. So we should give a little bit of grace to those that are a little older because nobody has ever seen this. At the same time, and this is where integrating multiple generations into the workforce is going to be even more critical in the next couple of years. We have to get them to understand that the kids are still going to have to pay their dues with respect
Yes.
in the way that they work, but they do still have some good ideas too. You have to admit that the fact that they grew up with technology isn't always a bad thing. And you can say,
100%.
oh, yeah, and you can say, oh, we didn't have all of these devices to save our back, and we didn't have to have hearing protection back then. It's like, you know what? That's why you can't hear now. So maybe you should think about that a little
Yes.
bit. Not paying your
Totally.
dues. That's just not being smart to a certain degree. That's being stubborn. The one thing that I kept coming back to, or at least what I heard with the butting of heads with the younger generation coming in, when you said if you're not willing to make the change, don't complain about it. There has to be a naive curiosity that they bring to it in the way that it's not, this needs to change, but why do we do it this way? And maybe there's a reason, maybe there's not.
Absolutely. So that's the thing. Learn, understand. I mean, hell, for anybody that's been working with a company for any period of time, you've been through a change in management. And in some cases, some freaking genius comes in and just decides we're doing business differently and changes everything. And it's a damn disaster. And they get to blame the previous administration about a year, maybe two. And then if when their stuff doesn't stick, they start blaming everybody else. They've spent zero time, they invested zero time to understand what was currently working. So it's the same effect of the youngling coming in and saying, we need to go paperless. Hold on, bro. Understand the current condition before you go make changes. And again, in construction, we're like super action biased. We see something that we don't like that's a little bit inconvenient without understanding the facts about it, change it. And so we end up in this super unstable environment. But back to like the younger folks, or I should say folks that are early into the industry, investing some time to really understand the why, the how, and I think the real magic happens here. What it feels like to do it the current way. Like once you know what it feels like, understand why, maybe some of the history or whatever, then you got a little bit of stroke to say, hey, I got an idea. Let's try this.
A ton of processes that just the way we do things as an organization that becomes part of the culture. It is still part of the culture. It's not the way we generally use the word culture nowadays. That
Right.
it's just
Right.
the way we've always done it. There's always a way to kind of make me cringe a little bit, to be honest. And as it should. It should at least perk our ears up to be like, then is it the best? Like, no. I'm not saying we need to change it. Does it still fit current market conditions? But at the same time, there's
Right.
always
Right.
context that just looking at it as face value that doesn't tell you how we got here because processes evolve. And maybe there's governmental regulatory reasons of why things have to be done the way they have. Everything can't be disrupted. Maybe there's some things that could. Processes tend to not evolve with a growing and changing organization unless you are very intentional about evaluating if they still serve the purpose that they used to in the current capacity.
Totally. I mean, the thinking of this is just the way I've always done it. There's a bunch of stories around it, right? I've lived it. I still practice that. Don't tell anybody because they might judge me. But does it, as we grow and our organizations grow, we start working with different clients, bringing new people to the team, the conditions are different. And so, do the processes, the established processes, do they still meet the intended outcome under these new conditions? That question never gets asked. We just keep doing what we've always done. Why? Because it's easier.
Because change is hard because we always default to our comfort zone, kind of like what you were saying earlier. We do what's comfortable. We crave, there's something about human nature that we crave routine, even at the fault of not
Absolutely.
stopping to see if it's still the best way.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so then how do you approach a lot of people to have to get on board? And you could bully stick somebody into saying, this is what we're doing things, but that's not the way to get true buy-in. So how do you approach change within a group? The specifics of the group don't
Yep.
don't matter.
Yeah, they absolutely don't. The easy way, the cheat code that I feel he figured out was make somebody's day better. So here, I'll give you an example. When I was a regional lean manager, part of my job was to go to projects and assess their adherence and performance as it relates to the lean program that we have. And when you self-assess, you always think you're doing better than you actually are. And so it would have been one way for me to do my job, but have been to say, hey, you're giving yourself a 4, you're actually a 2. And here's some things you need to do to get better. I don't get invited back to lunch when I do that. Now, couple that with the fact that all of these people came from the GC world, construction management degrees, engineering degrees, and then you got this super sexy freaking plumber coming out here to like critique their stuff. So I could have done it that way, which I think most people do. What I decided was I could tell they didn't really want me on the project, like, we get you on, right? Like, I mean, the only role I think that's less appreciated or maybe lower than a safety professional is a lean professional, right? Like, that's the bottom of the barrel there in construction. So what I do, go to the train and say, hey, I'm going to come out. I'm going to be there all day. If I can post up in the train or out on the job site somewhere, is that cool? Yeah. If there's anything you want me to look at or help you with, let me know. I'm down. Otherwise, I'm gonna observe and, do whatever we can do. Okay, cool. So what I'm looking for is what's kicking them in the face. What are they struggling with? What is bringing them pain? Because here's the thing, we've been swimming in this pain and misery for so many years. We become numb to it. We just deal with it. So then I'm saying, it seems like a lot of communication, miscommunication within our team and the emails and the text chain and all this other stuff. They're like, yeah, like, blah, blah, okay. And how about you? Yeah, yeah. The wall and create a little Scrum Kanban board and put stickies up there. Say, hey man, what do you think about this? What is it? Well, you're gonna be the yellow sticky, you're gonna be the purple sticky, you're orange, and you just fill out the sticky notes of what you're working today. Then you put a bunch of stickies over here of the other things that need to get done. And put like whatever you're working on right now, you put it here in this column. When you're done with it, you put it in this column. Would that save you time? Like, oh my God, yes, that would freaking totally we stop fighting. Awesome. That's different than me saying, what you really need is a mode of communication that's visual. Let me do my PowerPoint slide of right. So it's that like understanding what is hurting, what is bringing the people pain, leveraging whatever knowledge and experience I have in this new world to minimize their pain. I do better than get buy-in. I earn trust, and that's the game.
And I've heard that exact same advice given even for people within an organization. We often hear the advice, the way to get noticed is solve your boss's problems. It's the same thing. How do you make somebody else's job better in what you do? But also what that does is it creates that future perspective of seeing ahead. I often say my dad was a welder and pipe fitter when I was growing up and worked shutdowns. And working out with him on our property, he basically trained me as a welder's helper to say, hey, you see what I'm working on. Notice what I'm doing.
You know what's next?
And look to see what's next and get me that wrench, get me that tool or board or whatever we're working on. He's like, that's the way you make yourself useful. Instead of just standing around waiting for orders, start thinking through the next steps in the process and where I'm going to go next, because it's most efficient for me to not have to tell you. If I have to tell you, I can just go get it. When you can see ahead of me and have it laid out, right? And that's the way, really, that's the way we have to learn how to think within the organization. I'm always taking it back to office personnel because that's my experience, but it's the same thing, right? I mean, that's how we create strategic thinkers, and that's the step that young professionals don't get right out of college. They've been taught to learn and the education, but they don't know how to apply it. And so now they have to learn how to put that into practice in real world scenario.
Yeah, I think, and this is just straight up what I believe. Again, no data or statistics, but once you get out of school, there's no freaking syllabus. There's no more spring break. There's no more summer breaks. There's no more study questions. You got to figure the damn thing out. And I think after spending, say, 20 years in the education system, we become conditioned that there is one right answer for every question. And in construction, that is absolutely false. And I think also in life, like the galaxy does not have an answer sheet.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is a multi-dimensional approach. It's very, like you said, there's no black and white. There's just lots of gray and a better gray, and through what are the options, thinking through what are the consequences of each, because there's always consequences. Yep. And what direction should we go that's closest to getting us to our goal with the least amount of pain, or will help lead to the most profit, or set us up in the best strategic position going forward? Because that, I mean, on a job site, in an office, that thinking will take you everywhere.
100%. So you got to be willing to ask the question. You got to be willing to be wrong, and you got to be willing for somebody else to have the answer.
That takes a lot of humility.
Yep.
Understanding that you're not always going to have. A lot of times when you think you've got the answer, you're not listening externally or internally. You're not listening for the details, the little minute details. And that attunes your internal dialogue.
100%.
You don't open yourself up for other possibilities. So
yeah,
I want to hear as far as your career journey. We talked about like where you started and where you are now. But so far removed from working for the GC, in that world per se as an employee, I want people to, in the same way we talk about problems are never linear, I want people to understand that careers don't have to be linear. That used to, and that's what we talk about the old guard versus the new kid. Used to, you went to work for an organization, you paid your dues because you had to put in your time, and then you progressed through the organization. And some people think that it still needs to be that way. Well, that was great when you were going to spend 30 years there because there was a pension. All of that has just been different nowadays. So here's some of the traits that you identified as strengths within yourself. And even more important, was it intentional, or did it kind of happen to you through the doors and opportunities that you just, sometimes you take enough shots and opportunities are going to present themselves, right? We want to say take charge of your career and this and that. No, sometimes it's just the odds. It's the statistics, and you put up enough shots, and you're going to hit a couple half-court shots every once in a while. I mean,
100%, bro.
Somebody just starting out in their career, what I admire about what you do, the way you work, is that you set your terms. You've established your career to a point where, I assume, you're setting your own terms in terms of how you want to work, producing content with your business isn't completely automated. It's still about Jesse and what you do. But at the same time, if you decided you wanted to take a month off to do a road trip or something, you could figure out a way to do it. An employee necessarily can't, right? Without there being some other cost. So what advice would you give based on your experience about how to kind of take charge of being intentional with your career path?
Yeah. So I'll answer it first this way. I didn't do it on purpose at first. It was like in accident or on accident. I kept getting promoted. I fought against being a foreman for a lot of years because I just wanted to work from 7 to 3:30 and go home. They kept saying, "You need to be a foreman. We need you to be a foreman. You want to go blah, 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 blah." I'm like, "Oh, God, whatever." Finally, The reason I took the role was because I got sick and tired of working with jerk foremen. Like they were jerks. They didn't, not all of them. There were some that were awesome, but most of them were just horrible. Like they hoarded information, they freaking scratch offs, scratching lottery tickets in the truck in the air conditioning while everybody's out there working in the heat. Just so I could do as bad as them. So I took the position so that I could do it different. I could treat people different. Well, I was still a jerk too, but maybe a different style of jerk. So now I was working for an amazing organization that had the systems and resources to help develop their people, which was TD Industries. So the number one thing I would recommend, find a company that invests in the development of the people. That was luck. I didn't do that on purpose, but man, did it play out. And over amazing companies that made major investment people. Now, another what I after I got promoted to foreman, then I got promoted to superintendent, then I got promoted to assistant production manager. Then another recommendation I'll have, understand your learning. So what I mean by that is early in my career, it's like every 5 years, there was a big leap where I was like, okay, I need another challenge. I'm ready for more. And that happened at about 5 years. Once I became aware of it, guess what? That interval tightened up, became a 3 year learning cycle. So more responsibilities, more things, different experiences. Right now, I think I'm at like an 18 to 20 months. And so I think we all have these learning cycles that we're not aware of. And if we were, and so what does that look like? When I got to the 5 year mark in the like in plumbing, I got bored and I started causing problems. Right. Like it was just, it was like everything was like on replay. Groundhog Day. I'm gonna go work in the mechanical room. I'm gonna go, whatever. Then when I got to the foreman level, same thing. I got bored. I started causing problems. I needed more. So now I can feel like, okay, things are getting a little squirrely in here. I need to go challenge. Another thing, so along the way, I finally got to a point where, and I think everybody has to experience this because I can say it and they ain't gonna believe me. Getting all the shiny crap is a trap. So what do I mean by that? I thought by the time I was a superintendent and I had the 3 bedroom house, 2 car garage with a truck and a car and 3 vacations a year, that I was gonna feel like I arrived. I was fulfilled. It was the emptiest I ever felt in my life. Because here I am, damn near making 6 figures as a plumber. This was back 15 years ago. Anyway, and it sucks. I'm empty. But I think you need to feel that to believe it. So then that helped me understand that, like, oh, that's not the way. What gives me fulfillment? It's serving others. So sharing my gifts and talents in service to others gave me fulfillment. And we've probably talked about this, Brad, but I wrestled with addiction most of my life. It wasn't until I started doing for others, like walking in service to others, that I could get sober because the fulfillment that I needed was in serving others. What I was trying to do, that gap, that hole that I had with substances and women and all kinds of stuff, unhealthy, self-destructive. So instead of chasing the shiny stuff, figure out what your gifts and talents are and share them with people. Like that's fulfillment. The way you make money, that's a whole different question. Like the career thing, most people don't have an income problem. They have a spending problem. Spend less than what you make, right? Pretty generic, hard in practice. But if you spend, I figured finally got to a point where I started spending less than what I made, which created the conditions for me to select the leaders that I would work with, select the work that I would do, and select people that I would do it with. And when I started doing that, the world opened up.
Yeah, there's a lot there. That's like that could be a that's an episode in of itself. Um, yeah, one when I think about the lessons that I would tell young professionals is whatever you can do to build options into your life. You want options is what you want to have options. And in your case, what that means is not being financially bound to the job because you have a spending problem. No, you're absolutely right. And effort compounds the same way our money does early in our
Oh
careers
man,
that creates opportunity later because opportunity means options.
yes, Yes. I would, again, back to the service idea. Like, some of the most amazing opportunities that speaking engagements, I emceed an women's luncheon in South Carolina. That opportunity came as a result of me volunteering on another thing. So, I mean, I shared the stage and kind of joked around with the lieutenant governor of the state. This troublemaking freaking plumber from the south side of San Antonio, Texas, was joking around with the lieutenant governor. That opportunity came from me being involved in the construction community and volunteering my time in some way. And so, whenever there's an opportunity to expand, but maybe there's another one for the young ones. When there is an opportunity for you to learn something new, to spend time around people you don't know, take it. Because another thing that social media, the amazing people that are gonna help you grow are looking for you right now. You need to help them find you, and you can't do that by living Groundhog Day on replay and over again. You gotta get out there, you gotta serve, you gotta make yourself visible in a manner that is contributing to others, and the people that are gonna speak into your life will find you.
Gold. I mean, yeah, I almost want to end right there on that. The one thing I'll say to put a cap on that, you and I've talked about Tim Ferriss a little bit in his podcast.
Yep.
And I absolutely love, he has his 17 questions that he asks himself. I don't know if you've ever been through that list, which it's a great list. That's where he started his self-awareness journey. And it was things like, if I have a decision to make, what would happen if I'm in a difficult spot? What if I did the opposite for 24 hours? Or, it's that sort of thing, right? It's just, it's a thinking exercise. But one of his, and I don't know if this is one of the 17 questions, but it's one of them that I've heard him say very often, is when there's a decision to be made, he's like, which one of these, I think he refers to it as, he says, which one of these would increase the luck quotient? Like, which one has the potential to lead to more opportunities? And use that as a decision-making matrix. Right?
Yes.
And that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, you don't volunteer looking for opportunities, because then your motives aren't for serving, they're somewhere else. But at the same time, your service, somebody else recognizes an opportunity that they could really benefit, or their audience could benefit from hearing your message.
100%. Bro, this is gonna be kind of funny, but it's a Tim Ferriss question. What's the one decision I can make that will eliminate 1,000 decisions down the road? I have the ultimate answer for that. You stay single. What do you think about that?
That's 24 years too late. It's worked out pretty good for me, but it's hilarious though. But that's a lot of his mentality, right? So hey, I want to wrap it up. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I appreciate it, but first off, where can people find you? And then end with what message would you like to get out? I'll throw the Tim Ferriss question at you. You had a billboard anywhere that says anything, what would you put on it and why?
Love it. So people can connect with me on LinkedIn is the best place. Jesse, if you just look up Jesse Depth Builder, you'll find me. Or my website, depthbuilder.com. Depth is in like deep trust, deep vulnerability, deep accountability. Now, as for the billboard, it would say this: be kind to yourself and share a smile with someone. The reason is everybody that I know is their own worst critic. Everybody that I know, if I talk to them the way they talk to themselves, they would disown me or kick me in the face. So we all need a reminder to be kind to ourselves. And sharing a smile with somebody is a little bit of a cheat code, because even if I'm in a pissy mood, when I share a smile with somebody, guess what happens? They smile back.
At the very least,
And
they
I feel
soften. At the very least, they soften. And they usually smile back.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate the wisdom and look forward to being able to talk again soon.
Likewise, my brother.
Thanks, man. Thank you for listening to the Building Blocks podcast. If you found anything beneficial from today, I would appreciate you reaching out and letting me know on LinkedIn. I'm always looking for ways to add value to the listeners and interviewing leaders in our industry. If you found this helpful, I would appreciate if you leave us a review and reach out to me on LinkedIn and give me some feedback. In addition, if you know someone that would be good for an interview, please let me know and I'd be happy to connect with them. You can find myself and any of the other guests on LinkedIn, where we continue the conversations about leadership, careers, growth, and development.